Wow.
Yep, I went to Wales, and while I was there I attended the Awdry Extravaganza 2025, and although I've already been back in 2022, I've been itching to go again. So seeing as this would be the last Awdry Extravaganza for a while, I decided to go for it, and here's how that went down. After arriving in London, I hopped on a Circle Line train to Moorgate and then changed for a Northern Line train to Euston.
National Rail Services.
Upon arrival at Euston, I saw the Railway 200 Inspiration train, and got on the 10:10 service to Birmingham New Street, which was a Class 3 90 Pendolino. After a 17-minute delay, we arrived at the bustling and congested Birmingham New Street. The Class 158 Sprinter train to Aberystwyth was delayed due to congestion and other services taking priority over it. But nonetheless, it still arrived and we all hopped on and went on our way. When we arrived at Shrewsbury, we were told to change trains because the delay meant the train couldn't continue the journey to Aberystwyth. So we had to change trains at Shrewsbury to continue the journey. At the Cunliffe, the 4-coach train splits and becomes two 2-coach trains. The front half goes down to Aberystwyth and the rear half heads up to Pwllheli. We had a bit of stand time here, so I got out and took some photos before heading back on and continuing the journey. We arrived at Aberystwyth 10 minutes late, and after checking into my accommodation I headed to a footbridge to film a Vale of Rydal train passing underneath. After that, I legged it to the Vale of Rydal station and got a few more shots. Then I went to the Royal Pier Arcade and played Mario Kart Arcade GP DX.
Yoshi is sneaking up the leaders. Yoshi is rapidly closing in. Come on. Yoshi used a giant mushroom. Yoshi is closing in. Yoshi has attacked.
Then after that I headed back to the railway station and did more filming and called it a day. Tuesday morning was very rainy and miserable, but regardless, I walked to the footbridge to film the first train of the day passing through.
I love filming trains, especially when I could do so while standing in a puddle and getting wet socks.
After that, I took shelter in the museum and had a look about the place. Some of the exhibits include a Kerr Stewart Wren class, a Ford Model T adapted to run on rails, Fire Queen, an engine built for the 4-foot gauge Padarn Railway, and the Great Western Railway Duke Dog Earl of Berkeley from the Bluebell Railway, which used to work on the Cambrian line. The train I booked to travel on was the 12:15 departure, and because there was a lot of people travelling that day, they had to get another coach. After that, we all got on and the train departed. At Devil's Bridge, the train has an hour stand time, and the return journey wasn't as packed, because most of the passengers went to the nearby Devil's Bridge, which is what the station is named after. The Vale of Rydal is an interesting railway. It opened in 1902 as an independently run line, but in 1912 it was bought by the Cambrian Railway Company, and when the 1923 Grouping Act occurred it became part of the Great Western Railway, and when 1948 came about and British Railways was created, it remained part of their network until 1988, or 89 depending on who you ask, when it became the first part of British Rail to be privatised. And during BR's ownership, it was still using steam engines even after the 15 Guinea Special, resulting in the somewhat unusual sight of a steam engine wearing BR corporate blue with the double arrow logo on the side. We arrived at Aberystwyth at 3:15 and I called it a day soon after. Wednesday was bright and sunny, unlike yesterday. The train I caught was the 8:26, and the station I needed to get off at was Dovi Junction.
We are now at Doki Junction. This train is for
Now, despite being in the middle of bumfuck nowhere, it was fairly bustling, as there was a train to Aberystwyth waiting for our train, and our connecting train would be arriving in 5 minutes. Here it is now. At Town Station we had several minutes of stand time, so I got out and took some shots. It was time to leave, so I got back on and continued the journey to Fairbourne. At Fairbourne, I walked up to the curved level crossing and saw that they were doing work on it. Then I walked back to the station and had a look at the museum and the big model railway. The first train ran, but it was delayed by 20 minutes due to the aforementioned repair work.
It may look like a flickering mess, you know, through the phone, but you know, through my eyes, it is just fine. So I don't know why it does the flickering thing.
After spending the morning in Fairbourne, I headed to Towyn, where I'd be staying for the rest of the week. Yes, I booked 2 places to stay.
Towyn. It's been a hot minute since I've been here. The world's first preserved railway, or as the locals say, why ref road Gwyn Taff Unri Brid ar Daigul.
Upon arrival, I headed to Town Wharf Station and saw number 2 Dolgar. After seeing Dolgoth, I headed into the Narrow Gauge Railway Museum.
I like how it says the author of Thomas the Tank Engine and not the author of the Railway series. Fancy jumping at a silly old train, scaredy little engine.
And headed back out to see Edward Thomas arrive. Coach 8 was part of the train, and it stands out for being painted blue rather than red. After checking into my accommodation, I headed to Pendray to see Dolgoth return. After that, I walked to Tonfanu, a request stop where I made my intent clear and got the sprinter train to stop.
Y tren nesaf i gyrraedd yw'r gwasanaeth 19 munud wedi 7 i Birmingham rhyngwladol. Mae disgwyl i'r gwasanaeth hwn adael am 28 munud wedi 7 yn galw yn Tywyn, Aberdyfi, Penhelig, Cyffordd Dyfi, Machynlleth, Carsws, y Drenewydd, y Trallwng, Amwythig, Wellington, Shropshire, Cawthraid Canolog, Wolverhampton, I woke up at 6 AM to get the train to Porthmadog and went to the harbour station.
The train I booked to travel on was the 10:40 Festiniog railway train, and while I waited I saw the 10 Welsh Highland Railway train depart northbound to Carnarvon. After shunting the coaches around, it was time to hop in. The engine hauling the train is James Spooner, specifically James Spooner 2. It was completed in 2023 to replace Earl of Merioneth from 1979 and even uses the same power bogies. Our train had to wait for the Quarryman train, which was hauled by Linda. We only had 50 minutes at Blaenau Festiniog, but I did a fair bit. I saw the Hunslet diesel, I walked along the mainline platforms and even got the driver to ring the bell. Yes, the engine has a bell. I hung around Porthmadog for a bit before heading back to the mainline station and headed to Pwllheli to complete the Cambrian line. If you look at the background, you can see the Welsh Highland Railway train going over the crossing.
There is a custard cream underneath that seat.
The train had 20 minutes of stand time at Pwllheli, so I had a bit of a wander and found this. fun fact, I was on the same train as Ronan the Bluey too, which was pretty cool. After I arrived at Tallinn, this happened.
Say the line, Adam.
Well, I didn't really do anything.
Yay! Okay, add the other line.
Ernie!